Hi, everybody. Scott Lear here with B-Chord. We are at Direct Image Studios right outside of Music Row here in Nashville, and we are talking to Kenny Royster. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good. So we're here in your studio, which is gorgeous, by the way. Give us a little background on how you got into music and how you opened up the studio about, 15, 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. It's been about 20 years. I started out just doing demos for songwriters and really kind of like budget-oriented things, and just bought better gear and just kept on doing it the old-fashioned way, like I really earned it. Yeah, which was great. And it was a real good learning thing. And plus, I helped a lot of musicians, stay off of the road so they could be like learning the craft of being a studio musician.
Okay.
And developed a lot of them, and a lot of the guys ended up playing on Luke Combs' Hurricane,
Nice.
#1. And these were guys that I was like, kind of like. We were all developing and growing, right? And then as gear got better and just the whole thing, we worked together for years doing lots of demos. And then we started working on, people that were artists trying to get record deals and doing artist development. And at that point of things, a lot of people that are coming to Nashville and they're trying to be a singer or songwriter, or, kind of, most of the time it's a multi-purpose kind of thing.
Sure.
Like if a songwriter comes to town and they can sing, well, if somebody says, we love your voice, and they want to be an artist, then it's like, yeah, I get to be an artist, right? And then if they don't have the voice or whatever it is, or the motivation to be an artist, then maybe it might end up being that they put their voice on it, but at the same time, too, they could pitch it to whoever, Cole Swindell or whatever, somebody
Right.
out there that's like looking for something. So it kind of ends up being that. And so I worked with a lot of people with that capacity, that were even like Billy Currington and Craig Campbell and Craig Morgan and Richie McDonald from Lone Star and Trick Pony. And I mean, it just, I would forget how many.
The names go
Oh,
on
my
and
God.
on, right?
It's just, I've recorded over 14,000 songs.
Okay, wow.
So, and I've got over 75,000 hours in the studio. And I'd have to tell everybody one thing: wear your earplugs.
Helpful hint.
Yeah, I wear earplugs everywhere except right here.
Gotcha.
So
Perfect.
yeah, take care of your ears.
There
yeah.
you go.
Yeah, and
So-
then you can have some longevity.
So we do a lot with up-and-coming talent.
Yeah.
What would the process be for an artist, who's coming in, wants to try to record something? How does that usually work?
They get in touch with me and they book a session. And a session in Nashville has been around for about 50 years. And a session is a 3-hour block with musicians. They go from 10 o'clock till 1.
Okay.
And then they get an hour break, and then they usually have another session that starts at 2
Okay.
and goes till 5. Then they get another break, and then they go from 6 to 9. That's been set up for years because historically all the studios were all within 10 minutes or so. So that would enable a musician that's really talented and really comes up with it. It's not just whether or not you can play, it's whether or not you can create.
Got it.
Because somebody that's coming up with a signature lick that ends up being something that somebody hums on a guitar or whatever, that becomes the creation process of a musician. And all these guys that were really creative about coming up with parts, everybody wanted them because they just played on whoever's record, and they have skills. So it enabled those guys to get from studio to studio and to be able to make a living. So they could work 3 hours with one producer, and then, okay, well, that guy, that's all he wants to record that day, and they can go to another studio and have an hour break to pop to the other studio. So so what they would do is they'll set up a session with me for 3 hours, and I've got usually 5 musicians. I usually track with bass, drums, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and keyboards.
Okay.
And at that point, and then they all double up on things. And the acoustic guitar players usually play another utility instrument, or somebody does, like a mandolin or a banjo.
Yep.
And then the electric guitar players, there's usually 2 or 3 passes. They'll play a rhythm pass, then they'll play like a power pass, and then they'll add another fill, whatever the song calls for.
Sure.
So that's what, like if you came into town, that's what we would do. You'd get in touch with me. I get your 3 songs or 4 songs that we want to track in the 3-hour block. I usually try not to do more than that.
Okay.
Unless they're just like really super fast kind of demos. And I just don't do stuff like that anymore. I did them years ago. But most of the time the contemporary music requires, there's a bug flying around, too much detail, So years ago, you could do stuff that was more rudimentary, kind of like straight ahead country songs. But now the contemporary music is way more complicated dynamically and layers, and there's a lot more things to it.
Well, and it's great because so many people don't understand the process behind,
Yeah.
how many hours are put
Yeah.
into that. So it's great to hear.
Well, typically when, like anything that you hear a record out on the radio, most of the time they've booked 3 hours and they'll try to do 2 songs.
Okay.
That's just for the tracking, not the vocals.
Gotcha.
And at that point, you've got a singer sitting in the vocal booth, and he's going to sing what's called a scratch vocal.
Okay.
And a scratch vocal doesn't have any intention of being kept. It's just there to be the vehicle so that the people understand the emotion. Is it a rowdy song? Is it a sad song? An introspective song? A happy song? Is whatever,
Okay.
So, and it gives them the melody. And it doesn't have to be sung perfect. It just has to be, it's not going to be like a master vocal.
Okay.
And it's just there for reference, so
Cool.
the musicians can play off of it,
Yeah.
So, and that's really what goes on a tracking session.
That's great. So what type of equipment are you using?
I'm using modified Pro Tools. Pro Tools is like pretty much the staple of most of the world.
Okay.
And what I have is, mine's been modified, being that they went in and they changed components on it. It's kind of like technical stuff, but to the technical bugs out there, it is a Black Lion modified Pro Tools, and they changed the converters. Converters are what converts a drum to a number, because it becomes a number, right?
Sure.
And then the electronics interpret that number into a sound.
Gotcha.
But it ends up being a number because it's digital. That's why they call it digital. Well, everything that starts out like a drum or a voice or a guitar or a piano, well, that starts out as what they call an analog instrument, right?
Okay.
Then they go into the converters, and the converters convert it to numbers. Well, that process, if you have really great electronics, it's going to sound better.
Okay.
And that's what mine are. My converters are modified, and my clock. The clock is a digital interpretation of all of those numbers, because pretty soon you're going to have just a massive amount of numbers
Sure.
that have to be interpreted, and basically it's like a funnel. So you've got guitar and kick drum and snare drum and hi-hat and acoustic guitar and piano and electric guitar and lead vocal and background vocal and reverb. So you got all these numbers, right? Well, they all get funneled down to left and right, in your earbuds.
Sure.
You got a left one and a right one. So all those numbers have to be interpreted. So there's a million numbers coming at that thing, what they call a clock. And if your clock's not very good, then it can't interpret all those numbers fast enough, and it won't sound good.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like the difference in a picture that has less pixels or more pixels.
Okay.
And the clarity of it, like, really looks really clear in 3D. That's a high quality clock.
That's a great
The lower
interpretation.
quality clocks, they still sound good, and you still have the same picture.
Okay.
But it's just not as clear.
Got it.
Yeah, and so and those are all modifications that I had done. People will say, "Well, did you do an A/B?" I never did an A/B comparison. I just knew that the superstars like Lady Gaga and Maroon 5 and Mutt Lange as a producer, and I believe Bruno Mars, though they were all using modified Pro Tools.
Okay.
So rather than even start out, I just started out at the top.
Start there, right?
That's
Great
right.
place to start.
Yeah, I just spent a few extra bucks.
So you named some artists earlier, big names that you've worked with and all. Who are you working with now? What are some of the names that you've been working with?
Well, right now I'm working. I've always been kind of like a funnel for artist development. I'm a vocal coach. I've coached 4 champions in the Texaco country vocal competition, the ones that actually won $100,000 and out of 2.4 million singers. So which was just an amazing thing just to kind of look at it, because there was no plan in that. I wasn't like planning, hey, I'm going to groom you to go win this vocal competition. It was just, I just taught people what I teach them.
Sure.
And I learned a lot from Renee Grant Williams, and I've spent hundreds of hours in the studio with her while she was teaching singers. And so her and Seth Riggs, he's another vocal coach that I spent a little tiny bit of time with in LA. And he coached Michael Jackson and all these rockers from the 90s and all this different stuff. But I learned from different people, but I took kind of like that and funneled it into my interpretation of coaching vocals.
Okay.
And there's a huge science in it that people don't realize. That's pretty amazing when you know it. And it has a lot to do with Consonants, not for pronouncing anything. It has nothing to do with pronouncing words.
Okay.
But consonants add conviction. Like if I say conviction, see how I hang on that V? Or if I said, man, I feel lucky, hang on the L. The time spent on beginning consonants convicts the word. If I never, see how long I hang on the N, right? Or even Tony the Tiger, they're great, right?
Perfect.
There's a reason why they do that stuff, because it really convicts a lyric. And singers that don't understand the beginning consonants, they really miss out on a huge thing. Like Garth Brooks, Faith Hill, Tim McGraw, Christina Aguilera, Bruno Mars, Michael Jackson, they are all consonant freaks.
Gotcha.
I mean, they are freaks. Billie Jean is not my, watch the N. Billie Jean is not my lover. Now watch a girl. She's just a girl. He cuts the off. If you go, she's just a girl. See how lame that is?
Yeah.
So all he did is cut off the
Yeah.
and created a little space and hit the G.
I'm getting a free lesson here right now.
Yeah, it's just an amazing thing that I like to share with people, because
No.
there's only two elements in speech. There's vowels and consonants. That's it. So most people ride the vowel, and that's the tone.
Sure.
Right? But the consonant is the conviction, and it's the artistry.
That's great.
And people just don't realize it. And once you hear it and you recognize it and you know where to go look for it, and a lot of people innately just gravitate there. Like Luke Combs definitely gravitates there, just real natural.
Okay.
But I did help him out with some phrasing just so that he realized, there's words to put more emphasis on than others, and
Sure.
other things sound awkward, just like I shared that with a lot of people that I've worked with. But it's just part of the process. But as far as like singers that I work with that are like developing artists, like that I'm working with right now, there's a girl named Brianna Romer, and she is a new pop artist that I'm working with, and I've worked on records with her. And worked on a record with her, and we're developing that right now, and we're just starting to get to the point of promoting and who we're going to look for label-wise, and we're in the process of. We've got the record done, now we're going hunting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
I've got to ask you, walking in here and looking around, there's a picture of you with an Emmy.
Yeah.
Give us the story on that.
Yeah, there was a guy named Darby Ledbetter, and he's in the National Guard, and he still is, and he was writing some songs and came to me, and I did the same thing, vocal coaching and artist development with him, same as I did with like Luke Combs, and I did artist development with lots of different singers that are out there in the world now, in different capacities. But this guy Darby came in, and he was writing songs, and he had been back to Afghanistan 5 times,
Wow.
or at that point it was 4, but he
Okay.
ended up going another time. So 5 times, and he'd had his like Humvee blown
Okay.
up,
Oh, my
and
goodness.
he made it live through that, and it was all behind him, on the
Sure.
back part of the Humvee, so he made it through. But but he came in, and we had worked on some kind of pop country stuff, kind of in the more contemporary country. And then he said that he had an idea for a song that he wanted to write for the National Guard, because he's in the National Guard.
Okay.
Right? So we produced the song, and there was another guy involved in the production, and we did, and me, and we produced the song, and then we knew the video department people. They're here in Murfreesboro. That's
Okay.
where they do all the videos for the National Guard, for promos and that kind of thing. And they saw or heard the music and said, we want to put together a video for promoting it, and so they did that, and then they put it in 3,700 movie theaters worldwide. Like when you go into a movie before the
Sure,
movie,
yeah.
all the commercials. It was basically a way of showing the world or America or whoever that the National Guard does things to help within the United States.
Okay.
Like if there's floods, sandbagging and helping, and so showing that part of it, how the National Guard affects people in America rather than overseas and
Wow.
different places. And then we got done with that, and they put it all together, and they said, hey, it was like on the last day, they said, we're going to enter this into the Emmys. We said, wow, let's do it. So they did it. Then they said, hey, we got nominated. Wow, we got nominated. And it was called, originally his title was Don't Let Your Guard Down. I said, that sounds like a threat. So you should make it a promise. I won't let my guard down. So I ended up changing the title to the song. And then to I won't, because that sounds like a promise. Like if I said to you, man, I got your back, man. I won't let my guard
Sure.
down. So it was cool because it's National Guard, right?
Yeah.
And so we ended up cutting the track and the video, and then they said, man, we won. And I had an artist that was coming here from Australia, So I couldn't even go to the Emmys.
Oh,
I
man.
couldn't go. And Darby was on a plane back to his 5th time.
Oh, my
The
goodness.
night of the Emmys. So his wife accepted it for us.
Oh, that's great. That's a
Yeah.
great story, though. I mean, of course, the one time you want
Yeah.
to be somewhere. And,
Yeah, I had people coming all the way from Australia, plane trips, Oh, okay, well, just go back to that island,
Okay, so before we let everybody go,
Yeah.
tell us how an artist can get in touch with you, the best way to reach out to get out here and set something up with you.
It's all at directimagestudio.com.
Okay.
And you can Google my name, Kenny Royster, like oyster, it starts with a R. So, yeah, Kenny Royster or directimagestudio.com, all my contact information, song samples, client lists. I've got all 5-star ratings on Google. I mean, the vocal coaching really is a dividing line in the sand. It's a huge plus that anybody that walks in here, they're going to get, because I can sing. And
Gotcha.
because I can sing, I can help a singer from a singer's vantage point. And so new people that are coming into town, everybody can get great musicians, but you can't get somebody to help you get your vocals right. And if you as a singer come into town to record something, the only thing that you should be concerned with is what are you going to sound like? Because you already know the musicians are going to kick butt.
Sure.
That's what they do every day. So you got the musicians taken care of, the studio's taken care of, and then you're standing behind the microphone and you need somebody like me.
What else do you need there, right?
I mean, it's really the truth of it, and it's just I'm not hyping it. I'm just telling you straight up.
Sure.
By having somebody that's a world-class vocal coach, and I can really help people teach about phrasing and just all of the things that I barely touched on. It's the dividing line in the sand. I mean, it'll be the difference of somebody throwing it away in 30 seconds
Sure.
or listening on and considering it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Kenny, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We really, really appreciate it. Everybody, check out Kenny, Direct Image Studios. We'll put tags to all his stuff underneath of this video. Go follow us at bcord615 or on the web at www.bcord.net. Thank you, everybody.